Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Senate Republicans clear a key vote to push Trump's massive tax cuts and spending bill forward before July the 4th, despite Elon Musk calling it insane. The 940-page package includes tax breaks, spending cuts and more deportation funds, with final debate and House votes still ahead. Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez wrap up a 3-day $50 million Venice wedding with VIPs like Oprah and Bill Gates in attendance. As the final party kicks off, no space for Bezos protesters march while Venice's mayor praises the couple's business spirit. Around 140,000 students and citizens rally in Belgrade, Serbia, demanding early elections after a deadly station collapse sparked months of unrest. What began peacefully turned violent as riot police and protesters clashed, with tear gas, stun grenades, and several injuries reported. Up to 200,000 people flood Budapest streets for Pride, defying Prime Minister Viktor Orban's ban in a colourful, peaceful rebuke. Mocking banners, drag t-shirts and a carnival atmosphere transforms the city as attendance skyrocket from just 35,000 last year. President Donald Trump slams Israeli prosecutors for pursuing corruption charges against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying the US won't stand for this. Netanyahu, indicted in 2019 for bribery and fraud, denies all charges in the long-running trial. Lebanon's health ministry says Israeli airstrikes kills 3 people in the south, violating an active ceasefire. Hezbollah hints its patience is running out as Israel confirms hitting targets in Maruna. India's foreign ministry says it rejects Pakistan's claim that New Delhi was behind a suicide bombing in North Waziristan. The blast killed at least 13 Pakistani soldiers when a bomber rammed a convoy near the Afghan border. France bans smoking on beaches, parks, gardens and near schools to protect children from secondhand smoke. Health Minister Vorin says tobacco must disappear where there are children. Violators face a €135 fine. Our top story today, we go to the Middle East. On Saturday, US President Donald Trump posted a fiery message on Truth Social, slamming the ongoing corruption trial against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump called it a political witch hunt and warned it could disrupt critical negotiations with both Hamas and Iran. In the post, Trump described Netanyahu as a war hero and praised his leadership. He questioned how the Israeli Prime Minister could be expected to handle national security matters while sitting in a courtroom all day, he said. Trump compared Netanyahu's legal troubles to his own and said the charges are over, quote, nothing, cigars, bugs, bunny dolls, etc., end quote. Netanyahu is facing multiple charges, including accepting luxury gifts and attempting to secure favorable media coverage. An Israeli court recently rejected his request to delay testimony. Trump pointed to America's billions in aid to Israel and said the US is not going to stand for this. The comments come just days after a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran. Netanyahu's team says the Prime Minister needs time to focus on security. Trump's post is already stirring debate over foreign policy and judicial independence in Israel. We're now joined by Professor Rohan Gunaratne, who's an international affairs expert, and he joins us live from Singapore. Rohan, thank you very much for joining us on the program. I just want to get your reaction to what it seems like is an American president commenting on the Israeli judicial system. What are your thoughts?
Prime Minister Netanyahu have a very close relationship. They have worked together to detect and disrupt the Iranian infrastructure mounting attacks, not only in against Israel, but also in the United States. So I personally believe that Trump has intervened on behalf of Netanyahu because of the professional and the personal relationship that they have. Of course, Israelis have two opinions about Netanyahu. There are two narratives about him. In the eyes of many, he is a war hero. In the eyes of others, he should be prosecuted by the Israeli criminal justice and prison system. So these are the two debates that are taking place. Of course, Netanyahu also faces internationally other challenges, but the United States will clearly stand behind the Prime Minister of Israel, because together they have collaborated, and built a partnership to secure the Middle East and to ensure American interests prevail in the Middle East.
Professor Gunaratne, you are staying with us as we move to some more updates from the region. Deadly strikes hit Gaza again on Saturday, with Gaza's civil defense agencies saying Israeli forces killed 37 people across the territory, including at least 9 children, according to the reports. Spokesman Mahmoud Basal told AFP that 30 people died in 7 separate drone and airstrikes. 2 more were killed while waiting for food aid in the Netzarim zone, central Gaza. In Jabalia, an airstrike on a home killed 3 children, according to the reports. And in northeast Gaza City, at least 6 more children had died, some while sheltering near a school. At Al-Shifa Hospital, families wept over the bodies of 7 victims, including 2 children. The dead lay wrapped in white shrouds and blankets. Videos from southern Israel showed smoke rising from northern Gaza after multiple blasts. Israel launched its Gaza offensive in October of 2023 following Hamas's deadly attack. After a brief war with Iran that ended in a US-brokered ceasefire last week, Israeli forces say they are now refocusing on Gaza. Palestinians are still holding dozens of Israeli hostages. This comes as Qatar confirmed it is working with the United States and Egypt to turn the Iran ceasefire momentum into a truce deal for Gaza. I just want to reiterate that those figures that we just gave you cannot be confirmed by us. We are once again joined by Rohan Gunaratne, international affairs expert. Rohan, this war continues to rage on. Now the Iran conflict seems to have simmered down. This one seems to be back in full swing. We have more death numbers coming in every single day. What are your thoughts on how Israel is conducting itself in this war? We've obviously seen figures that have come from the territory where it seems people have been once again killed while waiting for aid. What are your thoughts on the conduct of the Israeli military, if this is true?
IDF needs to be restrained because there has been a spike in civilian deaths. Both the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister Katz have denied these allegations that the Israeli forces deliberately targeted civilians. But what is important for the world to understand is that this devastating war is caused because of Hamas terrorist attack in October 2023. And this is Israel's reaction. And also the world must understand that Hamas is always hiding behind population centers, behind churches, mosques, schools, hospitals, and mounting these attacks. But at the same time, it is imperative for IDF to be more restrained, because if there are civilian deaths, then the support for IDF to fight terrorism, fight extremism will diminish.
Rohan, thank you very much. You are staying with us once again. We move on to another related development. Thousands rallied in Tel Aviv on Saturday night, demanding the immediate release of hostages still held in Gaza. It was the first major protest since Israel's ceasefire with Iran on June the 24th. Families and supporters packed Hostages Square, waving Israeli flags and holding photos of their loved ones. Protesters urged Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to act now. Many also called on US President Donald Trump to help secure a Gaza ceasefire, praising his role in the Iran deal. Former hostage Liri al-Bag delivered a powerful speech, urging leaders to follow their brave decision on Iran with action to end the war in Gaza and bring all the hostages home. Here's what the former hostage had to say.
פונה אליך, ראש הממשלה ולמקבלי ההחלטות. אני פונה גם לנשיא טראמפ. קיבלתם החלטה אמיצה בנושא איראן. תקבלו עכשיו החלטה אמיצה שמסיימת את הלחימה בעזה ומחזירה את כולם עכשיו!
We're now once again joined by Rohan Gunaratne to discuss this further. Rohan, we've seen huge protests against the Israeli government domestically within Tel Aviv and other cities in Israel, some attacking the Prime Minister and his government's actions directly. What are your thoughts on the opposition that the government is facing in trying to get these hostages home? Bringing the hostages home is the main issue particularly. Do you think Netanyahu and his government are doing their best to do so?
Currently, 53 hostages held by Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and by other terrorist groups in Gaza. But the success of Israeli troops recovering these hostages alive is minimal, and that is why it is so important for Israel to work with the United States and with other governments in the Middle East to secure the safe release of these hostages. These hostages are likely to die if IDF continues to attempt to rescue them through military operations. So I think there should be a very good balance, and Prime Minister Netanyahu himself, he understands it, but he has taken a very tough position against terrorism, and he will continue to conduct these operations to rescue Israeli and other foreign nationals who are being detained by these terrorist organizations in Hamas. My personal view is that Arab leaders, Muslim leaders should request Hamas to release the hostages, to disarm and to surrender, or they should give access to these Hamas fighters to other countries to travel. But certainly the priority should be to release those hostages who are being held in Gaza. That is essential. That should be the tier one priority.
Yes, thank you, Rohan. We move on to another related development. France is stepping forward to help make food distribution safer in Gaza. On Saturday, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said France and Europe are ready to contribute to the protection of humanitarian aid efforts. Barrot's remarks come as international concern grows over deadly incidents at aid centres in Gaza. He condemned the loss of life, saying 500 people have died while simply trying to get food. France is calling for urgent measures to ensure aid reaches civilians safely. Barrot emphasised that any European-led effort must also address Israeli concerns about aid falling into the hands of Hamas. European leaders are now discussing how to play a more active role in stabilising aid operations. Paris says Europe has the expertise, capacity and moral responsibility to act. The European Union has already called for an independent investigation into attacks near food distribution points. France's position adds pressure on Israel to allow for international oversight and better coordination. As criticism mounts globally, Europe's voice is getting louder, demanding both safety for civilians and accountability from all parties involved. Rohan, we move on to this topic now. As we've mentioned briefly previously, these incidents at aid sites, the 4 that are in the Gaza Strip currently, we've seen over 500 reported deaths while people have been trying to get food from these Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid sites. Now we've all seen the visuals. These things look chaotic as people scramble to get the aid that they desperately need. European nations in particular have started opposing some of Israel's actions, imposing some small sanctions, whether that be on Israeli ministers and settlers and so on. Do you see Israel cooperating with Europe, with European nations on this ask for an independent investigation, or do you think the international pressure will not bow to the international pressure here?
Thomas, as you know very well, Israel is first concerned about its security interests. That is the highest priority. They want to neutralize any threat anywhere, especially in their immediate neighborhood after the 2023 attack. But at the same time, there is deep concern on the part of the European countries that Israel has not done its best to protect the Gaza population. So Israel will have to now take certain measures to ensure that those civilians who are running towards the food centers, the food convoys, are also protected. And I think that understanding and that realization is gradually percolating because of the most recent deaths. So within Israel also, there's a lot of pressure on the government to have a more humanitarian approach towards the civilians who are now in need of this food. So I believe that there will be a consensus and there will be a more positive movement. But what is important is that Israel has permitted the flow of these relief supplies, both from Europe and from the United States, and also funding from international agencies to feed the population in Gaza that has also suffered very significantly.
Rohan, thank you once again. We move on to another related development. According to reports, 6 Israelis were detained overnight after attacking soldiers near the West Bank village of Kfar Malik. The Israeli military says dozens of civilians hurled stones and verbally abused troops. They also vandalized military vehicles and tried to ram the soldiers. The security forces dispersed the crowd and arrested 6 suspects. This violence follows an earlier attack by settlers in Kfar Malik, where Palestinian officials say 3 Palestinians were killed. The Palestinian Health Ministry accused Israeli settlers of setting fire to homes and to vehicles. The Israeli military says it responded after settlers set fire and clashes broke out with Palestinians. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the attacks on the soldiers, and he called for a thorough investigation and promised to prosecute those responsible. Opposition leaders also condemned the violence, calling the attackers extremists and criminals. Israeli settlements in the West Bank are considered illegal under international law. Settlement expansion has increased since Netanyahu returned to power in 2022, supported by far-right parties. This has fueled tensions and violence across the region. And finally, we're joined by Rohan Gunaratne once again. Rohan, do you think the Israeli government is doing enough to prevent this settler violence in the West Bank particularly? We've mentioned previously that these settlements are viewed as illegal under international law. Some critics say that the Israeli government even in some circumstances, in regards to some ministers, pushes it forward. We saw Smotrich, the finance minister, he announced 22 new settlements in the West Bank. What do you think the Israeli government? What do you think of the Israeli government's actions in regard to this issue?
Firstly, these settlements by the far-right groups have created a lot of turmoil, both for the Palestinians and for the Israelis. And I personally believe that these settlements should stop because it will never contribute to peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis or peace in that region. So, but at the same time, it is important for there to be a greater understanding on the part of both the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, that is the ruling entity, and the Israeli forces that are operating, because there are terrorist cells that are active in West Bank, and those Israeli forces, the reserve forces and the regular forces, are constantly vigilant of those activities. But there has been some illegal activity that has made West Bank Palestinians react to the presence of those soldiers, and there has been clashes. So it is important to minimize those clashes and to ensure that there is harmony and amity between the Israelis and the Palestinians. It is only then we will see peace in the Middle East.
Rohan Gunaratne, thank you very much for your insight and joining us on the programme. We now move on to our next story, but stay in the Middle East, where Israeli drone strikes killed 3 people in southern Lebanon on Saturday, according to Lebanon's health ministry. The attacks come despite a ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah. 1 man died when an Israeli drone strike hit a car in Khanun village. Israel's military said it targeted and killed Hassan Mohammed Mahmoudi. They claim he launched anti-tank missiles at Israel during the recent conflict. Later, another strike hit a motorcycle in Morona, near Tyre. 2 people died, including a woman. 1 more person was wounded in the blast. These fresh attacks followed deadly strikes on Friday. In Natataya, a woman was killed and 25 others were injured in what Lebanon called an Israeli drone strike on an apartment. Israel denied targeting civilians. A military spokesman said a Hezbollah rocket triggered by the Israeli strike caused the explosion in the building. Despite a ceasefire deal signed last November, Israel continues to carry out strikes in southern Lebanon. The agreement required Hezbollah to retreat north of the Litani River. It also called for Israel to withdraw its troops from Lebanese territory. Lebanon's president accused Israel of violating the US brokered deal. Israeli forces remain in 5 positions in the south, citing security concerns. Now we move from the Middle East to the United States, where the Senate is posed for a crucial vote today on President Donald Trump's massive tax and spending package. Dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill, a sweeping 940-page proposal that promises tax cuts, military expansion and billions in rural aid, while sparking intense debate on its staggering price tag. Republicans say the bill delivers on Trump's second-term agenda, extending the 2017 tax cuts, eliminating taxes on tips and overtime, and pouring billions into border security and the military. It also includes $25 billion for rural hospitals and raises the SALT deduction cap to ease pressure on high-tax states like New York and California. Here's what Senate Majority Leader John Thune had to say about the bill.
We have before us today a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver legislation to create a safer, stronger, and more prosperous America. With one bill, we can deliver on a number of priorities: tax relief for hardworking Americans, economic growth, a stronger national defense, a more secure border, a more reliable energy supply. But Republicans are united in our commitment to what we're doing in this bill: securing our border, strengthening our national defense, growing our economy, unleashing American energy, cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, and preventing tax hikes on hardworking Americans. Mr. President, it's time to get this legislation across the finish line.
But critics, including many Democrats and even some Republicans, say the numbers just don't add up. Let's listen in to the Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer, voicing his concerns.
If Republicans proceed and follow Donald Trump over the cliff, with this bill tied to their ankles like an anvil, they will not only doom their own communities, they will doom their political fortunes, their own political fortunes, and have no one to blame but themselves. I yield the floor.
Non-partisan analysts say the plan could add $4 trillion to the national debt over a decade, far more than the $1.4 trillion in deficit reduction the White House claims. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer slammed the bill as a giveaway to the rich that cuts healthcare and food aid for the poor to finance tax breaks for millionaires. And then there's the politics. With Republicans holding just 53 seats in the 100-member Senate, they can afford no more than 3 defections. As of Saturday afternoon, at least 3 GOP senators, Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, and Tom Tillis, have voiced reservations that put pressure on swing votes like Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. The Senate hopes to pass a first procedural hurdle tonight. If successful, the bill moves to the debate stage. Final passage would then set it back to the House before Trump can sign it into law, possibly by the 4th of July. We're now joined by Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, who's a former diplomat located in Washington, D.C. Ambassador Kapoor, thank you very much for joining us on the program. I first of all want to start at the bigger picture of this bill. If this bill does get to the final stage, which is very, very well possible, how could this affect the average American consumer, both positively and negatively?
Well, it has lots of provisions which are positive in the bill, and it's going to sort of increase the deficit, as you just mentioned, very significantly. The deficit in the US has been ballooning in very large numbers, and that was initially seen as very alarming by the Trump administration. And that's why you had heard all the promises about trying to control the deficit and bring it down and trying to create savings. But then somewhere along the line, I think they decided that they want the economy to grow faster, and one way of making it grow faster is to increase the spending on the economy. And that's why, earlier, a few years back, the trade deficit, the entire GDP deficit of US would increase by approximately less than $1 trillion in a year. Then it became $1.5 trillion, then it became $2 trillion. Now a bill like this is likely to add $4 trillion to the deficit. So a stage is going to come when they are no longer going to be in a position, the economy here, the treasury, the administration, to manage the deficit. So they will have to think of some solutions which will be long lasting. So I don't know what those solutions could be, because since 1971, when they delinked the dollar from the gold and the currencies from the gold, so the dollar became like the international reference, currency, and that has been going on since then. So now I think very soon we are going to come to a stage, maybe in the next couple of years, by the end of the Trump administration or by the beginning of the next administration, as to what is a long-term solution, because this sort of dragging along and increasing the spending and ballooning, the trade deficit ballooning, is not going to work. Trump initially tried hard also to bring in manufacturing back into the US. That was a very good initiative, because that will give a lot of inherent strengths, because deficit is primarily what are your assets, what are your resources, what are your strengths, what are your capacities. Now those capacities had been lost over time in terms of manufacturing moving out of US mostly to China, and a lot of consumerism increasing significantly. So inflation is not going to be easily controlled with this sort of bill. There will be some different features about some aspects of taxation. They will try to increase to cope with the massive increase in spending, but it is going to be a very difficult balancing task. So that's why a lot of people are opposed to the bill also, and some of the people are trying to push for the bill. So currently, with the political situation being what it is, with Trump controlling Trump's party, Republican Party, having majority in the Senate and in the Congress, the possibility of ultimately everybody agreeing to, support the bill, not everybody, his party people, is currently there.
Ambassador Kapoor, some analysts and Democrats are calling this bill a giveaway to the rich. How can one interpret this bill as doing so of that? What are your thoughts?
The administration has in the past also had a track record of not punishing the rich or taxing the rich in any significant fashion. There were some attempts at some stage to increase the taxation levels for the rich, but whether that will happen at all is to be seen. So if that does not happen, the rich will again get richer, and the worry is that this bill should support the economy in terms of keeping it going, because the possibility of inflation increasing significantly is there. Now that can lead to a lot of depression in the market, and that can also lead to recession if it is not controlled. So I think he wants to complete his term by showing that the economy has done well, there has been some job creation, and the economy, there's some manufacturing, there's some jobs have come back to the US. So with that sort of impact in the people's mind, but of course, with all this spending, the rich will get richer because they are the ones who control the levers of the economy and of the corporate sector. So it is going to impact them positively.
Ambassador Kapoor, you are staying with us. We have some more information. In a related development, Elon Musk is once again going head-to-head with Donald Trump, this time over the president's massive tax and spending bill. In a series of blistering posts on Saturday, the billionaire tech entrepreneur called the Senate's version of Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill utterly insane and destructive, warning that it could destroy millions of jobs and inflict immense strategic harm to the United States economy. Musk accused Republican lawmakers of handing out subsidies to what he called industries of the past, while choking off support for future-focused sectors like renewables and high-tech manufacturing. He said passing the bill would be, quote, political suicide for the Republican Party. The renewed criticism comes as the Senate prepares for a critical vote to open debate on the nearly 1,000-page legislation, a cornerstone of Trump's second-term economic agenda. This isn't the first time Musk has taken aim at the bill. Earlier this month, he called the House version a disgusting abomination, triggering a high-profile feud with the Trump administration, which Musk had previously worked with as the head of the now disbanded Department of Government Efficiency. Musk also reposted criticism from energy experts like Princeton's Jesse Jenkins, who warned the bill's energy provisions could cripple the US transition to clean technology. In response to Jenkins' claim, no one in the energy industry wants this bill, Musk simply asked who. The tech mogul's fiery comments come at a time of growing Republican divisions. While some lawmakers support the bill for its tax cuts and rural aid, others, especially fiscal hawks, are alarmed by estimates it could add $4 trillion to the national debt. Social conservatives, meanwhile, are pushing back on potential cuts to Medicaid and food assistance, with razor-thin margins in the Senate. Even a few Republican defections could derail Trump's efforts to pass the bill before his self-imposed July the 4th deadline. We're once again joined by Ambassador Kapoor, who joins us from Washington, D.C. to discuss this in further detail. Ambassador Kapoor, what are your thoughts of the opposition to this spending bill? You have some Republicans also against this big, beautiful bill. What are the risks for them? And what are your thoughts about the current political divide of America when it comes to economic policy right now, especially in regards to this bill?
So, you have mentioned very important points, and it's a very thin line in the sense that if I'm a Republican senator, if I'm having a lot of pressure from my constituents, and if there is now the social media which is also taking up this cause in terms of criticism of the bill, then my capacity to support the bill or to sign on to the bill, I have some hesitation. Now, so far in most of the issues, the Trump administration has managed to keep most of the Republican, senators and congressmen in supporting all his proposals. This is going to be a very big test this time, because this hits at the basic, the basic basis of the economy, the roots of the economy, the current state of the economy, and the future state of the economy. So it is not going to be easy. They may be able to muster support at the last moment, but even if it gets passed, it's not that the crisis is going to blow over. The crisis is going to continue till there are some fundamental solutions which are found for dealing with this very, very important issue, which is going to impact not only the US economy but the global economy. So it's a touch and go. Currently, people here are talking about it being a 50-50 chance or a 49-51 chance of the bill not being passed. But let us see what happens in the next few days, because July 4th is what they are aiming to, sort of as a deadline for having everybody in line for passing the bill and for moving ahead. Elon Musk and Trump, that has been an issue. And, Elon Musk was a very strong supporter, as we saw during the elections. And then we had that big falling out between the two. That is going to impact to some extent, definitely, because Twitter has a very large following, and Elon Musk also has a large following. So while Trump's base earlier used to be very, very solidified base of supporters and voters, if that starts getting nibbled away or slightly getting hit and decreasing, that will be a serious matter, because in the midterm elections, if the Republicans lose control of either the House or the Senate or of both the houses, then it becomes very difficult for any other measure.
Yes.
It makes the administration a lame duck administration. So it's a very, very important balancing act which they have to do. But they are very, very determined at this point of time to make this big, beautiful bill go through, as they term it.
Ambassador Kapoor, thank you very, very much for your insight and joining us on the program. For our next story, we move over to Europe, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with Poland's departing President Andrzej Duda in Kiev, stressing the importance of maintaining strong ties between the two nations amid an upcoming leadership change in Warsaw. President Duda, making a farewell visit ahead of his term ending in August, called on Ukraine to be patient as nationalist President-elect Karol Nawrocki prepares to take office. Zelensky emphasized it was extremely important to preserve mutual support and understanding between Ukraine and Poland, noting that over 1 million Ukrainians have taken refuge in Poland since Russia's war on Ukraine began in 2022. Let's listen in to what Zelensky and Duda had to say to each other.
Для нас надзвичайно важливо зберегти такий характер відносин, зберегти таку підтримку, таке взаєморозуміння між нашими націями. Принцип добросусідства, принцип за нашу і вашу свободу, принцип вирішувати будь-яку проблему через дуже поважний діалог. І сьогодні це фактично твій прощальний візит як чинного президента Польщі в Україну, але ми завжди будемо раді тебе бачити в Україні як друга. Це, мені здається, головний статус. І дійсно ти хороший друг і смілива дуже людина. Я дякую тобі.
5 tygodni w Polsce będzie zaprzysiężenie nowego prezydenta. Dzisiaj prezydent elekt pan Karol Nawrocki złoży swoje prezydenckie ślubowanie przed Zgromadzeniem Narodowym. Wierzę w to, że będzie budował jak najlepsze relacje międzysąsiedzkie, że będzie budował więzi pomiędzy Polską a Ukrainą, także na przyszłość dla dobra naszych państw i dla dobra naszych narodów.
During the visit, Zelensky awarded Duda with the Order of Liberty, Ukraine's highest honour for foreign citizens, in recognition of his steadfast support throughout the war and efforts to strengthen Ukrainian-Polish relations. Duda attended Ukraine's Constitution Day celebration as guest of honour and was praised by Zelensky as a reliable ally and a true friend. The two leaders also discussed regional security, defence cooperation and coordination within NATO. President-elect Karol Nawrocki, who assumes office on August the 6th, has pledged to continue supporting Ukraine's defence, but has voiced opposition to Ukraine joining Western alliances like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We now move on to a related development. A large-scale Russian missile and drone attack struck Ukraine overnight on June the 29th, targeting multiple regions far from the front lines. Air raid sirens sounded across the country, including in western areas like Ivano-Frankivsk and Lviv. Ukraine's Air Force reported that Russia launched 3 Tu-95 bombers from the Olenia airfield in Murmansk Oblast, along with multiple groups of drones. A MiG-31K jet capable of carrying Kinzhal missiles also took off from Russian base in Nizhny Novgorod Oblast. Explosions were reported in several cities, including Mykolaiv, Kremenchuk, and Zaporizhia and Cherkasy. Civilian infrastructure was also damaged, and at least 3 people were injured in Cherkasy Oblast. In Kremenchuk, a fire broke out after an enterprise was hit, and a production facility was struck in Zaporizhia, though no casualties were reported there. Poland's military responded by scrambling fighter jets and activating air defense units in response to the Russian aerial activity near its border. The attack comes just a day after Russian President Vladimir Putin says Moscow is open to another round of peace talks, a claim viewed with skepticism by Kiev as Russia continues its campaign across Ukraine. Well, that is all we have time for, and we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.